Hey everybody, thanks for joining me in another video. My name is Kendall. I am an artist and I'm actually with a family of artists. My wife and son all dabbled as well. So this week I am testing out some new paper. This was beautifully printed on some watercolor paper by a printer friend of mine and in preparation for a project. So I wasn't sure of how the paper was going to react with what I wanted to do. I'm putting together a book and I was wanting to put some paper in there for the reader to be able to do their own watercolor using some line reference that I put in. But I wasn't sure on how that paper was going to hold up. This paper is I believe it's 80-pound watercolor paper, 80-pound text watercolor paper. It's a bit thin, so I was a little nervous. I mean, it printed great. The quality of the artwork that came out on it, I mean, it gave it a great texture. I would be completely happy with selling that kind of stuff as prints. But yeah, to actually apply. So I wanted to actually apply paint to it. I wanted to do some tests to see how well it held up. And so I did a couple here in this video. This first one, I'm just swatching out some paint colors. I just want to see how the tooth of the paper grabs onto the pigment, how the water reacts with the paper. And as you can see a little bit in some of the highlights when I was putting the paper on. When I was putting the paint on the paper, that it was already starting to buckle a little bit. And you would kind of expect that because of the thinness of the paper. And here's a good example. You can see this. I didn't apply any color correction to this video. I didn't want to blow out the whites any more than what the camera's already doing. This is a print that the printer did on this paper at like 30% opacity. The print doesn't bleed through at all, even at 30% opacity, and neither did the watercolor at this point. But I'm a little concerned with the buckling. But I didn't know if the buckling was because, well, I didn't stretch the paper. I just put it down. I just put the paper down and I just started applying pigment to it, and like, well, maybe that's what it is. But here's an example of some of the line art that I want to apply to the book, and possibly some my reference to go along with it. And so that's kind of the overall idea. So I went ahead and I cut a square out of one of the samples that I had, and I taped it down, wet the paper down, and just kind of did a rudimentary stretch. It was a quick stretch. I didn't give it a lot of time to soak. I got the paper wet, and then I dried it instead of letting it air dry. Then I wet the paper again and started applying the pigment to it. You can already see some of the buckling that's happening in the paper from the multiple wet applications that have gone onto it. The piece of cardboard underneath is just a really thin sheet of cardboard. It's nothing substantial. If that thing bends, the paper's going to bend. But again, this is just a simple test. And all I'm doing here, obviously, is just putting down some gradations and just color swatching in a larger controlled area rather than just plopping paint down in small uncontrolled squares. And I want to see how this paper reacts to the tape. I want to see how this paper reacts to the bleeding edges. I want to see what it's like when multiple coats of moisture is applied to the paper. So a little bit more of an in-depth test than just swatching it out on the paper. And you can already see there's a lot of buckling going on. So now we'll dry this. The color pigment stays on the paper pretty well, but you can really see in the red, it looks a little grainy. The tooth on it, and I'll show you an example in a little bit. The tooth on it on this paper is almost double that of cold press. So it makes some of the pigment look grainy or almost peely, like the paper itself started to pill, but it's not. It's just the tooth of the paper and how the pigment is sitting on top of it. This also was another thing. This was used tape. I had used this tape on another project, and when I peeled it off, it already started to peel off some of the paper. It just happened in that one section. The rest of it was pretty good. But again, this was used tape, so the adhesive on the tape has already been, degraded some by me peeling it off a previous project. So that's a little concerning. But as always, when you peel off tape, pull it away from the painting, like I am here, just in case something like that happens. The last thing you want is for the paper to rip right across your painting. So after it dried, I was a little surprised to see that the buckling wasn't nearly as bad as what I thought. However, the paint did seep through, did bleed through the paper. So if this was in a book format and you're applying paint, or there's a chance that this paint could go through to the next page. It didn't come up onto the cardboard, so it didn't go through that much, but I didn't spend that much time working and reworking certain sections as some people may. So here's an example of a cold press. This is a 140-pound cold press in my Moleskine sketchbook versus the 80-pound text watercolor paper from the printer. There's a visual difference in, and this is really why I didn't do any color correction. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will keep you posted on how this project progresses. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.